Clint Eastwood's agent of 25 years had been secretly selling his script ideas to competing studios. $8 million in commissions, dozens of betrayals, years of stolen opportunities. When Clint found out, Leonard Foster expected a lawsuit, maybe a settlement, definitely lawyers. What he got instead was far worse. Clint didn't sue. He didn't threaten. He simply made 3 phone calls. Within 90 days, Leonard Foster went from Hollywood's most powerful agent to unemployed and unemployable, and Clint never raised his voice. It was October 2005, and Leonard Foster was sitting in his corner office on the 9th floor of the Creative Artists Agency building in Century City, looking out at Los Angeles spread beneath him like a kingdom he'd helped build. Leonard was 56 years old and at the absolute peak of his power. He represented 47 A-list clients, generated over $30 million in annual commissions for CAOA, and was considered one of the 5 most powerful agents in Hollywood. His client list read like a who's who of cinema. 3 Oscar winners, 2 directors who'd made billion-dollar franchises, and Clint Eastwood. Clint had been Leonard's client for 25 years. Since 1980, when Clint was transitioning from actor to director and needed someone who understood both sides of the business, Leonard had negotiated every major deal since then. Unforgiven, $1 Million Baby, Mystic River, dozens of films, hundreds of millions of dollars, and a relationship built on what Clint valued most, trust. Leonard's phone rang. Clint's name on the caller ID. "Clint," Leonard answered warmly. "How's the edit coming on Flags?" "Good," Clint said, his voice that distinctive quiet rasp. "Listen, I need to see you. Today, my office at Malpaso, 4 o'clock. Something in Clint's tone made Leonard pause. In 25 years, Clint had never summoned him with that particular edge in his voice. "Is everything okay?" 4 o'clock, Clint repeated. "Come alone." The line went dead. Leonard stared at his phone, feeling the first flutter of unease. But he dismissed it. Clint was probably upset about some negotiation, some studio politics. Nothing Leonard couldn't smooth over. That's what he did. That's why Clint had kept him for 25 years. At 3:45 p.m., Leonard pulled up to the Malpaso Productions offices on the Warner Brothers lot. Clint's assistant showed him into the conference room without the usual small talk. Clint was already there, sitting at the head of the table. But he wasn't alone. 3 other men were present. A lawyer Leonard didn't recognize, a private investigator, and someone who looked like an accountant. "Sit down, Leonard," Clint said quietly. Leonard sat, now genuinely nervous. "Clint, what's this about?" Clint slid a manila folder across the table. "Open it." Leonard opened the folder. Inside were documents, bank records, email printouts, photos of Leonard meeting with studio executives, transaction histories showing payments from Paramount, Universal, Sony, Fox. Leonard's blood turned to ice. "How long?" Clint asked, his voice still that same quiet rasp. "Clint, I can explain. How long have you been selling my script ideas to competing studios?" The room was silent except for the hum of air conditioning. Leonard tried to recover. "This is a misunderstanding. Those meetings were 15 years, Clint interrupted. His voice never rose, but it carried absolute authority. "My investigator traced it back to 1990. 15 years of you selling information about scripts I was considering, directors I wanted to work with, projects I was developing. You'd find out what I was interested in, then sell that information to studios who'd rush similar projects into development to compete with mine." The lawyer spoke up. "Mr. Foster, we have documentation of 47 separate instances where you received payments totaling $8.3 million from various studios in exchange for confidential information about Mr. Eastwood's projects." Leonard felt his carefully constructed world crumbling. "Clint, listen. I trusted you. Clint said, and for the first time emotion crept into his voice. Not anger, disappointment, which was somehow worse. 25 years, Leonard. I trusted you with everything, my career, my projects, my business, and you were selling me out the entire time. It wasn't like that, Leonard said desperately. I never did anything that hurt you directly. The studios would pay for information. It didn't actually damage your films. Your movies still got made, still succeeded. Space Cowboys, Clint said. Leonard stopped. 2000. I spent 3 years developing that project. You knew about it. 6 months before we were ready to announce, Universal rushed Mission to Mars into production with a suspiciously similar premise. We lost our window. Had to delay a year. Cost us $15 million in prime release positioning. Clint pulled out another document. Bloodwork 2002. I was in early discussions with Warner Brothers. Somehow, Paramount knew exactly what I was offering and undercut the deal, forcing Warner Brothers to give me less favorable terms or lose the project entirely. He pulled out another. $1 Million Baby 2004. I wanted a specific cinematographer. You knew that. Somehow, 3 other productions suddenly hired him for overlapping schedules, making him unavailable and driving up his rate when I finally could book him. Clint looked at Leonard with those famous squinted eyes. Every single time the studio that benefited had made a payment to your LLC within 30 days of the incident. My investigator connected every dot. Leonard's hands were shaking now. What do you want? A settlement? I'll pay back. I don't want your money, Clint said quietly. I want you to understand what you did. For 25 years I trusted you. I gave you 10% of every dollar I made. I invited you to my home. I called you my friend and you were stealing from me the entire time. I'm sorry, Leonard said, and to his surprise he actually meant it. The weight of what he'd done, seeing it laid out in documents, hearing the betrayal in Clint's voice hit him for the first time. I know you are, Clint said, but that doesn't change what happens next. Leonard looked up, hopeful. What happens next? Clint stood. You're fired, effective immediately. I'm terminating our representation agreement. You'll receive formal notice from my attorney tomorrow. Okay, Leonard said quickly, relief flooding through him. Okay, that's fair. I understand. I'm not finished, Clint said. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. I'm also terminating your representation of me with CAA. I'm filing a formal complaint with the state bar regarding your ethical violations, and I'm personally contacting every single one of your other clients to inform them of what you've done. Leonard's relief evaporated, replaced by horror. Clint, you can't. My other clients have nothing to do with this. They have everything to do with this, Clint said, his voice still that deadly quiet. You betrayed me for money. You sold confidential information for personal profit. Every single one of your clients needs to know that their agent is willing to do that. They deserve to know they can't trust you. You'll destroy my career, Leonard whispered. No, Clint corrected. You destroyed your career when you decided to betray a 25-year friendship for $8 million. I'm just making sure everyone knows what you did. Clint walked toward the door, then paused. Leonard, here's what you never understood. In this business, reputation is everything. Power comes from trust. The moment you lose people's trust, you have nothing. And after I make those phone calls, no one in this town will ever trust you again. He left. The lawyer handed Leonard a termination agreement and a formal notice. The meeting was over. Leonard sat alone in that conference room for 20 minutes, staring at documents that represented the end of everything he'd built. That evening, Clint Eastwood made the first phone call. Tom, it's Clint. Listen, I need to tell you something about Leonard Foster. Tom Hanks listened in silence as Clint explained the situation, showed him copies of the evidence. Tom had been Leonard's client for 12 years. Jesus, Tom said when Clint finished. Clint, I'm so sorry. I don't even know what to say. Just thought you should know, Clint said. What you do with the information is up to you. But if he's willing to betray me, you should ask yourself if he's willing to betray you too. Tom Hanks fired Leonard Foster the next morning. The second call was to Meryl Streep. Meryl, it's Clint. I need to share something with you about your representation. Meryl had been with Leonard for 15 years. She listened, asked pointed questions, requested copies of the evidence. Then she thanked Clint for the information. Meryl Streep fired Leonard Foster that afternoon. The third call was to Morgan Freeman. Morgan, Clint here. We need to talk about Leonard. Morgan had worked with Leonard for 18 years. He was one of Leonard's oldest clients, dating back before Leonard represented Clint. Morgan listened, looked at the evidence, made his decision. Morgan Freeman fired Leonard Foster the next day, but Clint didn't stop at 3 calls. Over the next week, he personally contacted 20 of Leonard's 47 clients. He didn't have to call all of them. Word spread fast in Hollywood. By day 5, Leonard's phone was ringing constantly with clients demanding explanations, requesting meetings, asking if the rumors were true. Leonard tried to deny it, tried to spin it as a misunderstanding, tried to claim Clint was vindictive over a business disagreement. But Clint had evidence, detailed, documented, undeniable evidence. And when clients asked Clint directly, he would quietly share copies of bank records, emails, transaction histories, never editorializing, never attacking, just showing the facts and letting people draw their own conclusion. Within 30 days of that conference room meeting, Leonard Foster had lost 39 of his 47 clients. The remaining 8 were minor clients who didn't bring in enough commission to matter. CAA held an emergency meeting. The senior partners were furious, not at Clint for exposing the situation, but at Leonard for creating it. Leonard had violated every ethical rule of agenting. He'd exposed CAA to potential lawsuits and damaged the agency's reputation. On day 45, CAA fired Leonard Foster. 23 years with the agency, terminated with a single meeting. Leonard tried to find work at other agencies, but Clint's calls had done their damage. William Morris wouldn't touch him. ICM passed. UTA didn't return his calls. Every major agency in Hollywood knew what he'd done, and more importantly, they knew that Clint Eastwood personally considered Leonard untrustworthy. In Hollywood, being on Clint Eastwood's bad side was a career death sentence. On day 60, Leonard tried to start his own boutique agency. He reached out to mid-level actors, younger talent, anyone who might not have heard the full story. But Hollywood is a small town. Word travels. Every potential client would eventually Google Leonard's name and find articles about the Clint Eastwood betrayal, CAA's firing, the mass exodus of A-list clients. No one wanted to be represented by an agent who'd betrayed Clint Eastwood for money. On day 90, Leonard Foster closed his office. He had 2 remaining clients, both C-list actors who generated maybe $40,000 in annual commissions, not enough to survive in Los Angeles. Leonard had gone from one of Hollywood's most powerful agents to essentially unemployed in 3 months. And Clint Eastwood never filed a lawsuit, never gave an interview, never made a public statement about it. He'd just made phone calls, shared facts, let people make their own decisions, and that had been more devastating than any legal action could have been. In 2008, 3 years after the betrayal came to light, Leonard Foster was working as a consultant for a small talent agency in Phoenix, Arizona. No longer representing major clients, no longer in Hollywood's power circle, just trying to rebuild some kind of career from the ashes. A journalist writing a book about powerful agents tracked Leonard down and asked for an interview about his fall from grace. Leonard agreed, perhaps hoping to finally share his side of the story. "What happened with Clint Eastwood?" the journalist asked. Leonard was quiet for a long moment. "I got greedy. I convinced myself that what I was doing wasn't really hurting him, that the information I was selling wouldn't actually damage his career, that I deserved the extra money because I was the one doing all the work while Clint got all the credit. And were you right? Did it hurt his career? No, Leonard admitted. Clint's career was fine, the man's bulletproof, but that wasn't the point. The point was I betrayed his trust. And in Hollywood, once you lose someone's trust, especially someone like Clint Eastwood, you lose everything. Do you think his response was fair? Leonard considered this carefully. He didn't sue me. He didn't try to destroy me publicly. He just told the truth to people who deserved to know the truth. And was it fair? Yeah, it was fair. Brutal, but fair. Would you do anything differently? I would never have taken the first payment, Leonard said. That's when it started. That's when I told myself it was okay. But it wasn't okay. And Clint taught me that in the most effective way possible. The interview was published in 2009. Clint Eastwood was asked about it during a press junket for Gran Torino. Mr. Eastwood, there's a book coming out about Hollywood agents, and it discusses your former agent, Leonard Foster. Any comment? Clint's response was characteristically brief. Leonard made choices. Choices have consequences. I didn't destroy his career. His choices destroyed his career. I just made sure people knew what those choices were. Do you think you were too harsh? Clint looked at the interviewer with those famous squinted eyes. I think if you betray someone's trust for money, you can't complain when people stop trusting you. That's not harsh. That's just logical. That answer became a quote taught in business schools and ethics classes. The Clint Eastwood response to betrayal, not emotional, not vindictive, just logical consequences delivered with perfect precision. Leonard Foster never returned to Hollywood. He worked in Phoenix until 2015 when he retired from the entertainment industry entirely. He moved to New Mexico, bought a small house, lived quietly. In 2019, someone asked him if he ever regretted how things ended with Clint. Every day, Leonard said. Not because of my career, because I lost a friend. The career I could rebuild eventually. The friendship, that was irreplaceable. And I sold it for $8 million that I didn't even get to keep after legal fees and settlements. Worst trade I ever made. Meanwhile, Clint Eastwood continued making films, winning awards and building his legend. After firing Leonard, Clint represented himself for several years, negotiating his own deals with a skill that proved Leonard had been less essential than he'd believed. Eventually, Clint brought on a new agent, a younger woman who'd worked her way up at UTA. But the relationship was different, more transactional, less personal. Clint had learned that lesson the hard way. The story of Leonard Foster became one of those cautionary tales that gets shared at agency training sessions, film school ethics courses, and Hollywood parties. Don't betray Clint Eastwood. Don't steal from your clients. Don't confuse access with ownership. And most importantly, understand that Clint Eastwood's revenge isn't loud or dramatic. It's 3 phone calls, shared facts, and letting people draw their own conclusions. Which is somehow more terrifying than any lawsuit could ever be. If this story of trust, betrayal, and surgical revenge moved you, subscribe and share it with someone who needs to remember that in any business, reputation is everything. And once you lose people's trust, no amount of money can buy it back. Have you seen someone destroy their career through greed and betrayal? Share your story in the comments.